Sergeant Jack Harper crouched behind the makeshift barricade, his fingers tracing the familiar grooves of his M42 plasma rifle. The weapon felt heavier than it should, its weight a constant reminder of the impossible odds stacked against them. Around him, the remnants of Alpha Company huddled in the shadows of the abandoned mining facility, their faces illuminated only by the faint glow of status lights on their armor and the distant flashes of enemy bombardment. The facility's reinforced walls trembled with each impact from the Zorathian siege cannons orbiting high above. Through the haze of dust and smoke, Harper could make out the massive silhouettes of alien war machines marching across the Martian plains, their spider-like legs scissoring through the red dust with mechanical precision. Each step sent tremors through the ground, rattling loose debris from the ceiling, reminding Harper that their sanctuary was anything but secure. Status report, Harper barked into his comms, though he already knew the grim reality. His voice carried more confidence than he felt, a carefully maintained facade for the benefit of his soldiers. 12 confirmed survivors, Sarge, came Lieutenant Marcus Rook Rodriguez's voice, strained but steady. The young officer had been with Bravo Company before the massacre at Olympus Mons, where they'd lost over 200 men in a single afternoon. Now, like Harper, he found himself among the last defenders of humanity's foothold on Mars. Medical supplies are down to 20% capacity. Ammo's worse, we've got maybe 3 hours of sustained fire left if we're lucky. Harper's gaze shifted to Private First Class Emily "Doc" Watson, their field medic, who was tending to Corporal Jenkins' shattered leg in the corner. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency despite the tremors running through her arms. Jenkins had taken shrapnel during the last skirmish, and while Doc had managed to stabilize him, there was no denying the infection creeping up his limb. Without proper medical facilities, they were fighting a losing battle against time itself. Through the reinforced viewport, Harper watched as another Zorathian cruiser descended through Mars' thin atmosphere, its sleek obsidian hull glinting menacingly in the pale sunlight. The aliens had arrived without warning 3 weeks ago, their massive fleet appearing in Sol system like a swarm of locusts. Earth's military forces had mobilized immediately, but the Zorathians' technology made human weapons seem like toys. Their energy shields could shrug off nuclear strikes, their ships moved faster than anything humanity had ever built, and their ground forces possessed strength and reflexes that bordered on supernatural. Yet what truly chilled Harper to his core wasn't their technological superiority or overwhelming numbers, it was the laughter. Since the first contact, the Zorathians had shown an almost childlike amusement at humanity's attempts to resist. Their communications, when they bothered to broadcast them, were filled with mocking tones and derisive chuckles. They treated the conflict like a game, toying with human forces before crushing them utterly. Sarge, Rook's voice cut through Harper's thoughts, "We've got movement at the perimeter. Looks like they're setting up another assault position." Harper activated his helmet's tactical display, watching as dozens of red icons appeared just beyond their defensive line. The Zorathians were taking their time, savoring their victory like predators playing with wounded prey. He counted at least 50 of their elite shock troops, each one standing nearly 3 meters tall and armed with weapons that could vaporize concrete walls. "Prepare defensive positions," Harper ordered, rising to his feet. "Rook, take point at the north barricade. Doc, stay with Jenkins. Everyone else, form up on me at the main entrance. We hold this position until reinforcements arrive." If reinforcements arrive, he thought grimly. Earth Command had promised support, but with the Zorathians blockading orbital space, help seemed unlikely to materialize anytime soon. As his team scrambled to their positions, Harper allowed himself a moment to reflect on how quickly everything had gone wrong. 3 weeks ago, he'd been leading routine patrols around Bradbury Outpost, ensuring the safety of civilian contractors working Mars mineral resources. Now, he commanded the last organized resistance on the planet, holed up in an old mining complex that hadn't seen active use in decades. The facility's ancient machinery still hummed with residual power, its original purpose long forgotten by all but the most dedicated corporate historians. Harper had chosen it precisely because of its obscurity. The Zorathians seemed to target strategic locations first, leaving places like this until last. But even this advantage was fading as the aliens systematically swept through every human installation on the planet. His calm crackled to life again. "Sarge, you need to see this." It was Specialist Connor, Twitch, Davis, their tech expert, stationed at the facility's ancient control center. "I've accessed some of the old systems here. There's something unusual about our friends out there." Harper jogged toward the control room, weaving through piles of rusted equipment and broken furniture. The air smelled of ozone and decay, a fitting backdrop for humanity's last stand on Mars. When he entered the dimly lit chamber, Twitch was hunched over a terminal, his fingers dancing across the keyboard with nervous energy. "What have you got?" Harper asked, studying the array of monitors displaying various feeds from external cameras. "They're not using standard protocols," Twitch explained, his voice tinged with both excitement and fear. "Their communication frequencies, movement patterns, they don't match any known alien species we've encountered. And look at this." He pulled up a thermal scan of the approaching Zorathian forces. Their body temperatures fluctuate wildly. One moment they're registering as cold-blooded, the next they spike to levels that should be lethal. Harper frowned, examining the erratic temperature readings. "Could be some kind of adaptive camouflage." "That's what I thought at first," Twitch admitted. "But then I ran a deeper analysis. Their biology, it doesn't make sense. They're not just adapting, they're evolving, right in front of us. Every time we encounter them, they're slightly different. Stronger. Faster. Smarter." The implications hit Harper like a physical blow. They weren't just fighting an advanced alien race, they were facing an enemy that could learn and adapt in real time. No wonder conventional tactics had failed so spectacularly. "We need to buy more time," Harper said, his mind racing. "If we can hold out long enough to gather more data." A deafening crash echoed through the facility, followed by the unmistakable sound of metal tearing apart. The Zorathians had breached the outer perimeter. "Contact!" Rook's voice shouted through the comms. "They're inside." Harper sprinted back toward the main chamber, his rifle raised. As he rounded a corner, he saw the first wave of Zorathian shock troops smashing through the facility's heavy doors as if they were made of paper. Their chitinous armor gleamed in the emergency lighting, and their elongated limbs moved with terrifying speed and precision. But something caught Harper's attention amidst the chaos, the way the lead Zorathian hesitated upon seeing them, tilting its head in apparent confusion. Then, through his helmet's audio receptors, he heard it, a low, rumbling sound that sent shivers down his spine. The Zorathian was laughing. It wasn't the mocking laughter they'd broadcast over open channels. This was different, hesitant, almost nervous. Before Harper could process what he was hearing, the alien's expression changed dramatically. Its mandibles snapped shut, and its compound eyes widened in what could only be described as terror. The other Zorathians reacted similarly, their advance faltering as they stared at the small group of humans. Harper glanced at his team, confused by the sudden shift in their enemy's behavior. Then he noticed something remarkable. The temperature readings on his helmet's HUD showed their opponent's body heat plummeting rapidly. "Twitch!" Harper shouted into his comm, "What the hell is going on?" "I don't know, Sarge," came the specialist's excited reply. "But whatever it is, it's affecting all of them. Their biological readings are going haywire." The Zorathians began retreating, their earlier confidence replaced by something akin to panic. Harper watched in stunned silence as the supposedly invincible aliens withdrew from the facility, moving with none of their characteristic grace. Some stumbled, others collided with each other in their haste to escape. In that moment, staring at the retreating forms of their once invincible foes, Harper felt a spark of hope ignite within him. For the first time since the invasion began, he realized they might have found a weakness, one that could turn the tide of this desperate war. But as the facility's alarms continued to blare and the sounds of distant explosions echoed through the Martian night, Harper knew their victory was only temporary. Whatever advantage they discovered, they would need to exploit it quickly. The Zorathians wouldn't stay frightened forever, and when they returned, they would come prepared. Looking at his battered team, Harper understood that their fight was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. But for the first time, they had something more powerful than weapons or technology, they had knowledge. And in humanity's darkest hour, knowledge might prove to be their most potent weapon of all. As he helped fortify their position against the inevitable counterattack, Harper couldn't shake the image of those retreating aliens from his mind. There was something fundamentally important about their reaction to seeing humans, something that went beyond mere surprise or tactical reassessment. The Zorathians had faced countless species across the stars, yet their response to humanity was uniquely visceral, almost primal. "Twitch," Harper called over his shoulder, "start digging deeper into everything we have on these bastards. There's something they're not telling us, something about why they're so afraid of us." "Yes, sir," came the immediate response. "Already on it." The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place, but Harper knew they were running out of time to put them together. Outside, the Martian dust settled over the battlefield, carrying with it the promise of both danger and opportunity. Whatever secrets lay hidden in humanity's past, Harper was determined to uncover them, for in those secrets lay the key to their survival against an enemy that now feared them as much as they had once feared it. As the first rays of dawn crept across the Martian horizon, painting the blood-red landscape in hues of gold and crimson, Sergeant Jack Harper made a silent vow. They might be outnumbered, outgunned, and seemingly outmatched, but humanity had survived extinction-level events before. This time would be no different. The Zorathians had underestimated their most dangerous quality, the indomitable spirit that had carried humans through every challenge they'd ever faced. And now, for the first time, their enemies knew it too. The mining facility's ancient ventilation shafts rattled with the vibrations of distant explosions, but Sergeant Jack Harper barely noticed. His attention was fixed on the holographic display Twitch had managed to resurrect from the facility's long-dormant systems. The specialist's fingers danced across the interface, pulling up streams of data that made Harper's heart race with a mixture of hope and dread. "They're not just afraid of us," Twitch explained, his voice trembling with excitement. "They're terrified. Look at this." He expanded a section of the thermal scan data, revealing complex patterns in the Zorathians' biological responses. "Their fear isn't psychological, it's physiological. Their bodies are literally rejecting their own genetic structure when they encounter humans." Harper leaned closer, studying the intricate graphs. "You're saying—" "I'm saying we might be looking at something unprecedented," Twitch interrupted, his usual nervous energy transformed into focused intensity. "The Zorathians aren't just an advanced species, they're a synthetic one. Their biology is artificially constructed, and something about human presence causes their cellular structure to destabilize." The revelation hit Harper like a thunderclap. For weeks, humanity had been fighting what they assumed was a naturally evolved superior species. Now, staring at the evidence before him, he understood they were facing something far more complex, and potentially far more vulnerable. "Specialist," Harper said, his voice steady despite the implications, "can you weaponize this?" Twitch's grin spread across his face. "Already working on it, Sarge. But first, there's something else you need to see." He brought up another set of files, these ones buried deep within the facility's classified archives. The documents dated back nearly 2 centuries, detailing experimental research conducted by the original Martian Mining Corporation. Harper's eyes widened as he read through the technical specifications. "They were experimenting with quantum resonance fields," Twitch explained. "Trying to develop new mining techniques by manipulating molecular bonds at a fundamental level. The project was abandoned after some unfortunate accidents." Harper remembered the stories, tales of miners disappearing without a trace, entire sections of tunnels collapsing spontaneously. At the time, everyone had assumed it was due to Mars' unstable geology. Now, looking at the data, he saw something else entirely. The resonance fields. Harper murmured, pieces clicking into place. They weren't affecting the rock formations. They were affecting organic matter. Exactly, Twitch confirmed. And get this, the frequency range they were experimenting with matches the exact spectrum that seems to trigger the Zorathians' biological instability. Private First Class Emily Doc Watson entered the control room, her medical scanner in hand. Sarge, I've been analyzing Jenkins' infection. There's something strange about the alien shrapnel in his leg. It's adapting to our antibiotics, but not in a natural way. More like it's being programmed. Harper felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Programmed how? Like computer code, Doc replied, bringing up images on her scanner. Each cell contains multiple layers of information storage. When we apply treatment, new sequences appear, countermeasures specifically designed to resist our methods. Lieutenant Rook joined them, his face grim. While you were digging through old files, I did some recon. The Zorathians aren't retreating completely. They're setting up observation posts all around this facility. Whatever scared them off, they're determined to figure out why. The team fell silent, each member processing the implications. Humanity wasn't just facing an alien invasion, they were confronting an artificial intelligence that could rewrite its own biology in real time. Yet paradoxically, this same capability made the Zorathians vulnerable to humanity's most dangerous quality, adaptability. Weapons check, Harper ordered suddenly. Full inventory. We're going to need everything we've got. As his team dispersed to prepare, Harper found himself reflecting on the transformation taking place within his small band of survivors. When they'd first taken refuge in the mining facility, they'd been broken soldiers clinging to the last vestiges of hope. Now, despite the overwhelming odds, he saw something different in their eyes, determination tempered by understanding. Twitch had become almost manic in his focus, his usual nervous tics replaced by purposeful movements as he worked to interface the ancient mining equipment with their modern weapons systems. Doc moved among the wounded with renewed vigor, her medical treatments now incorporating electromagnetic pulses derived from the old mining technology. Even Jenkins, feverish and delirious from his infection, insisted on contributing what he could from his makeshift sickbay. The facility itself seemed to come alive under their care. Ancient machinery groaned back to life, responding to Twitch's commands with surprising alacrity. Power levels stabilized as they rerouted energy from long-dormant systems, illuminating corridors that hadn't seen light in decades. The air grew warmer, carrying with it the scent of ozone and possibility. But with every advantage they discovered came new complications. The quantum resonance field generators required massive amounts of power, more than their current setup could sustain for extended periods. The old cooling systems struggled to contain the heat generated by the modified equipment, threatening to trigger another catastrophic failure like those that had originally shut down the project. Worse still, their attempts to test the resonance field had revealed an unexpected side effect. While it indeed caused the Zorathians' biological systems to destabilize, it also affected human DNA, albeit in less dramatic ways. Prolonged exposure resulted in accelerated cellular degradation, manifesting as premature aging and increased cancer risk. Sarge, Twitch called from his workstation, we have a problem. The Zorathians are broadcasting again. Harper activated the external speakers, listening as the aliens' laughter filled the chamber. But this time, the tone had changed. What had once been mocking amusement now carried an edge of desperation, even rage. They know we're onto something, Rook observed, monitoring the tactical display. Look at their movement patterns. They're concentrating their forces, preparing for a coordinated assault. How long until they attack? Harper asked, already calculating their options. 24 hours, maybe less, Rook estimated. They're moving faster than before, using new tactics. The team gathered around the central console, each member contributing to the rapidly evolving strategy. Twitch proposed modifying their plasma rifles to emit short bursts of the resonance frequency, creating portable defensive zones. Doc suggested combining the frequency with existing medical treatments to create biological countermeasures against the Zorathians' adaptive abilities. We can use the facility's layout to our advantage, Rook added, pointing out key choke points on the map. If we set up resonance emitters at strategic locations, we risk bringing the whole place down on our heads, Harper finished for him. The structural integrity is already compromised. But we don't have a choice, Doc interjected. If we don't take the fight to them, they'll eventually find a way to neutralize our advantage. Harper studied his team, seeing in their faces the same resolve that burned within him. They were no longer just soldiers fighting for survival, they had become scientists, engineers, and strategists united by a common purpose. Each challenge they faced only strengthened their resolve, pushing them to innovate beyond anything they'd thought possible. Twitch, Harper said finally, start modifying the weapons. Rook, coordinate with Doc on setting up the emitters. We'll establish a layered defense, if they breach one zone, they'll walk right into another. As his team sprang into action, Harper allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The Zorathians had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, their ability to turn apparent weaknesses into advantages. The very limitations imposed by their situation, the ancient equipment, the limited resources, the confined space, had forced them to think creatively, to push beyond conventional military doctrine. Through the facility's reinforced windows, Harper watched as Zorathian forces massed outside. Their movements were more cautious now, their formations designed to minimize exposure to whatever had frightened them earlier. Yet despite their newfound caution, they continued to advance, driven by whatever imperative had brought them to Mars in the first place. What do you think they want? Doc asked, joining him at the window. It's not just conquest, they could have wiped us out easily if that was their goal. Harper nodded, having considered the same question. Whatever it is, it's worth more to them than their lives. That's why they keep coming back, even though we scare them. And that makes them predictable, Doc realized. They'll take risks they normally wouldn't, make mistakes. Which we can exploit, Harper finished. But we need to be careful. Overconfidence could be just as dangerous as fear. The hours passed in a blur of activity. Weapons were modified, defensive positions fortified, and contingency plans developed. Through it all, the team maintained constant communication, sharing discoveries and adapting their strategy in real time. Harper marveled at how seamlessly they worked together, each member contributing their unique skills to the collective effort. Yet beneath the surface efficiency, tension simmered. The accelerated aging effects of the resonance field weighed heavily on everyone's minds. Private Jenkins' condition worsened despite Doc's best efforts, his body struggling to cope with both the alien infection and the side effects of their experimental treatments. Several team members showed early signs of cellular degradation, their skin developing fine lines and their hair turning gray overnight. We're burning ourselves out to fight them, Rook observed during a brief respite. At this rate, even if we win, we might not survive the victory. That's why we have to end this quickly, Harper responded, though the words tasted bitter in his mouth. One decisive strike while we still have the advantage. As night fell over the Martian landscape, casting long shadows across the battlefield, Harper led his team through final preparations. The resonance emitters hummed with contained power, their frequencies carefully calibrated to maximize effectiveness while minimizing collateral damage. Modified plasma rifles clicked into place on soldiers' backs, each weapon representing countless hours of desperate innovation. Through the facility's security cameras, they watched as the Zorathian forces completed their encirclement. Unlike previous assaults, this time the aliens moved with mechanical precision, their forms more uniform than ever before. Harper recognized the signs of an artificial intelligence adapting to new parameters, optimizing its approach based on accumulated data. They've learned from their mistakes, Twitch noted, analyzing the enemy formations. Their tactics are more sophisticated, their coordination tighter. But so are we, Harper reminded him. Remember what makes us different. They calculate probabilities and execute optimal solutions. We improvise, adapt, and overcome. The final piece of their plan fell into place as Doc administered the newly developed biological countermeasure to each team member. The serum, derived from Earth's most resilient extremophile organisms and enhanced with quantum resonance properties, would help protect their cells from the worst effects of prolonged field exposure. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it bought them precious time. As the countdown to the inevitable assault reached its final hours, Harper gathered his team in the central chamber. Around them, the ancient mining equipment pulsed with repurposed energy, transformed from obsolete machinery into humanity's last line of defense. Through the reinforced windows, the Zorathian forces stood ready, their forms illuminated by the cold light of Mars' moons. This isn't just about survival anymore, Harper addressed his team, his voice carrying through the tense silence. We've discovered something fundamental about our enemies, and about ourselves. The Zorathians built themselves to be perfect, to adapt and evolve beyond nature's limitations. But in doing so, they created a fatal flaw. Their perfection is rigid, constrained by their programming. Our imperfections, our vulnerabilities, they make us stronger. He looked at each member of his team, seeing reflected in their eyes the same truth he'd come to understand. Humanity's greatest strength lay not in their technology or their numbers, but in their capacity to endure, to adapt, and to rise above every challenge through sheer force of will. When they come, Harper continued, they'll expect us to fight them on their terms. Instead, we'll show them what it means to face humanity at its finest. We'll use everything they've taught us, every advantage we've discovered, and we'll turn it against them. The facility's alarms began to sound, signaling the start of the Zorathian assault. Through the windows, Harper watched as the alien forces launched their attack, their movements precise and calculated. But this time, instead of feeling fear, he felt anticipation. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity wasn't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to prove that sometimes, the greatest strength comes from embracing one's weaknesses. And as the battle lines drew closer, Harper knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together, imperfect, unyielding, and unmistakably human. The resonance emitters powered up with a low hum, their frequencies spreading through the facility like an invisible shield. Outside, the Zorathians faltered, their perfect forms beginning to destabilize even before they breached the perimeter. Harper gripped his modified rifle, feeling the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders. This was humanity's moment, not of vengeance or destruction, but of triumph born from adversity. As the first wave of attackers crashed against their defenses, Harper smiled grimly. The Zorathians had come to Mars seeking dominance, but they would leave knowing they had encountered something far more powerful than they could have imagined. Humanity, flawed and magnificent, standing together against impossible odds. The first wave of Zorathian shock troops hit the outer perimeter like a tidal wave, their chitinous forms crashing against the resonance field barriers with devastating force. Sergeant Jack Harper watched through thermal imaging as their attackers' body temperatures fluctuated wildly, their synthetic biology struggling to maintain coherence in the face of humanity's quantum countermeasures. Resonance fields holding at 70%, Twitch reported from his station deep within the facility's control center. They're adapting faster than before, we've got maybe 10 minutes before they breach the outer layer. Harper adjusted his modified plasma rifle, feeling the subtle hum of the integrated resonance emitter against his palm. Execute Phase 2. Rook, take your team to position Bravo. Doc, prepare for casualties. As the order went out, Harper led his assault squad through the labyrinthine corridors of the mining facility. Ancient machinery groaned around them, its repurposed components now serving as both weapon and shield. The air crackled with electromagnetic energy, carrying the acrid scent of ozone and fear. Their first engagement came at Junction 7, where three main access tunnels converged. Harper flattened himself against the wall as Twitch's tactical display showed 27 enemy contacts approaching from multiple angles. The Zorathians had learned from their previous encounters, coordinating their movements with mechanical precision. "Remember, don't let them flank us," Harper whispered to his team. "We hold this position until the emitters are fully charged." Specialist Maria Ghost Alvarez moved silently to her designated position, her sniper rifle equipped with the experimental quantum resonance module. She had been part of the original defense force at Olympus Mons, one of only 3 survivors from her unit. Now, her hands were steady despite the memories that haunted her. The first Zorathian rounded the corner, its elongated limbs moving with deceptive grace. Ghost's shot caught it mid-stride, the combination of plasma fire and resonance frequency causing its synthetic flesh to ripple and distort. The alien staggered, its body beginning to break down at a molecular level, but instead of retreating, it pressed forward with desperate determination. "They're overriding their own safety protocols," Twitch warned over the comm, "their neural networks are rewriting themselves to compensate for the resonance effects." Harper's response was immediate. "Fall back to secondary positions. Execute Maneuver Delta 4. The human defenders melted into the shadows, leaving behind automated turrets enhanced with resonance technology. As the Zorathians advanced into what they believed was an abandoned corridor, the trap sprang to life. Beams of quantum energy lanced through the darkness, creating overlapping fields of destabilization that caused even the most advanced Zorathian units to falter. But the aliens adapted quickly, their collective intelligence analyzing and countering each new threat. What began as a tactical withdrawal threatened to become a rout as the humans found themselves pushed back toward the central chamber. In the medical bay, Doc worked frantically to stabilize Private Jenkins, whose condition had taken a sudden turn for the worse. The alien shrapnel in his leg had begun to actively resist treatment, its adaptive programming evolving faster than their countermeasures could keep up. Yet even as she fought to save his life, Doc made a crucial discovery. "Sarge, I think I understand what's happening," she called over the comm. "The Zorathians aren't just synthetic, they're hive mind controlled. Each unit is connected to a central processing node. That's why they adapt so quickly." The implications were staggering. If they could locate and disable the central node. "Position confirmed," Twitch interrupted, his voice tight with excitement. "It's mobile, housed within their command unit. Current location, Sector 9 Alpha." Harper made a snap decision. "Rook, take your team and establish a diversionary attack on the eastern flank. Ghost, you're with me. We're going hunting." The journey through the facility's service tunnels was a nightmare of close-quarters combat. At every turn, Zorathian strike teams attempted to cut them off, forcing Harper and Ghost to fight their way through increasingly desperate encounters. In one particularly harrowing moment, Corporal Ramirez sacrificed himself to hold a narrow maintenance shaft, buying precious seconds for the others to advance. "He knew what he was doing," Ghost said quietly as they pressed forward. "Bought us exactly what we needed." Harper nodded grimly, pushing aside the grief that threatened to overwhelm him. There would be time to mourn later, if they survived. When they finally reached Sector 9 Alpha, they found themselves facing the heart of the Zorathian invasion force. The command unit was a massive construct, its form constantly shifting and reconfiguring as it processed data from across the battlefield. Surrounding it were dozens of elite guardians, their bodies more machine than organic. "This is suicide," Ghost observed, her voice remarkably calm given the circumstances. "Not if we use their strength against them," Harper replied, already formulating a plan. "Twitch, I need maximum resonance output on my mark. Ghost, you'll have one shot to disable their primary processor array." As they prepared their assault, something remarkable happened. The Zorathian command unit hesitated, its normally fluid movements becoming jerky and uncertain. Through his helmet's audio receptors, Harper heard a sound that sent chills down his spine, not laughter, but something akin to panic. "They recognize me," he realized suddenly. "From our first encounter at the facility's entrance. They know what I represent. Understanding dawned like a sunrise over the Martian plains. The Zorathians weren't just afraid of humanity's technological capabilities, they were terrified of something far more fundamental. Something about human presence disrupted their very existence at a fundamental level. Execute now. Harper shouted, charging forward with his modified rifle blazing. The resonance field emanating from his weapon created a corridor of pure chaos through the Zorathian ranks, their synthetic bodies unable to maintain cohesion in its presence. Ghost's shot rang out, striking true and disabling the command unit's primary processor array. For a moment, everything seemed to hang in balance. Then, like a dam breaking, the entire Zorathian formation began to collapse. Without their central node to coordinate their actions, the individual units fell prey to the resonance field's effects. Their once perfect forms began to unravel, synthetic tissues breaking down into their component molecules. Yet even in defeat, they continued to fight, driven by some imperative deeper than survival. Twitch, initiate emergency shutdown protocol, Harper ordered, watching as the last of the elite guardians dissolved into nothingness. We need to contain whatever's left of their command systems. The victory came at a terrible cost. Of the original 12 survivors who had taken refuge in the mining facility, only 6 remained standing. The resonance fields had saved their lives but exacted a heavy toll. Accelerated aging had claimed Private Jenkins despite Doc's best efforts, and several others showed signs of severe cellular damage. As they gathered in the central chamber, surveying the aftermath of their desperate battle, Harper felt a complex mixture of emotions. Pride in his team's achievement warred with the knowledge that this was only the beginning. The Zorathians would return, stronger and more determined than ever. We did it, Rook said, his voice hoarse from shouting commands during the final assault. Against all odds. We bought ourselves some time, Harper corrected him. But look at what it cost us. He gestured to the fallen, to the visible signs of aging on his surviving team members. This isn't sustainable. Every victory comes at too high a price. Doc approached, holding a data crystal recovered from the Zorathian command unit. Maybe not, she said softly. Their central node contained complete records of their operations here. If we can decode it, we might learn why they're so afraid of us, Twitch finished, already setting up decryption protocols. And how to fight them without destroying ourselves in the process. The revelation struck Harper with the force of a physical blow. All this time, they'd been fighting defensively, reacting to the Zorathians' overwhelming power. But now they had something far more valuable, insight into their enemy's greatest weakness. Their fear isn't just biological, he realized aloud. It's existential. They see something in us that threatens their very purpose. As his team worked to analyze the captured data, Harper walked among the fallen, paying silent tribute to those who had given everything to buy humanity a fighting chance. Each life lost represented not just a personal tragedy but a piece of the puzzle they needed to solve. Through the reinforced windows, Mars' pale sunlight illuminated the battlefield where moments before chaos had reigned. The red dust settled slowly, covering the remnants of the Zorathian forces with Mars' eternal blanket. Yet beneath that surface calm, Harper knew the real battle had only just begun. The facility's ancient systems continued to hum with contained power, their repurposed functions now proven effective against an enemy thought invincible. The quantum resonance technology, born from humanity's earliest attempts to master Mars' resources, had revealed itself as their most potent weapon. But more importantly, it had shown that sometimes the greatest strengths emerge from embracing one's vulnerabilities. Sir, Twitch called from his workstation. You need to see this. The data from their command node, it's incredible. Harper joined him at the console, watching as streams of information scrolled across the screen. The Zorathians weren't just invaders, they were seekers, searching for something they believed humanity possessed. Something so fundamental to their existence that its presence alone could unravel their carefully constructed perfection. What are they looking for? Rook asked, joining them. I don't know yet, Harper admitted. But whatever it is, it's worth more to them than their lives. And somehow, against all odds, it's something we have that they desperately need. The pieces of the larger puzzle began falling into place. The Zorathians' initial amusement, their subsequent terror, their relentless pursuit despite mounting losses, it all pointed to a truth far more profound than mere military conquest. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival, they were defending something intrinsic to their nature, something so powerful that even an artificial species optimized for domination couldn't withstand its presence. As his team worked through the night, decoding fragment after fragment of alien data, Harper allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The battle they had just fought had changed them all, forging bonds stronger than any metal and revealing depths of courage they hadn't known existed. Yet the real challenge lay ahead. With each victory came greater understanding, and with that understanding came greater responsibility. The Zorathians had underestimated humanity's capacity for adaptation and innovation, but more importantly, they had failed to grasp the fundamental truth that made humans truly dangerous, their ability to endure, to overcome, to rise above every obstacle through sheer force of will. "We'll need reinforcements," Harper said finally, turning to face his remaining team. "More equipment, better shielding against the resonance effects. We can't do this alone anymore." "An Earth command?" Rook asked, knowing the answer already. "They'll want proof," Harper acknowledged. "Concrete evidence that we're not just holding our ground, but winning. That means we need to take the fight to them next time." The team exchanged grim smiles, recognizing the magnitude of what they were proposing. No longer content to defend their position, they were planning an offensive against an enemy that still outnumbered and outgunned them. Yet in that decision lay their greatest strength, the willingness to face impossible odds with nothing but determination and ingenuity. As Mars' twin moons rose over the horizon, casting long shadows across the battlefield, Harper knew they stood at a crossroads. The path forward would be fraught with danger, sacrifice, and uncertainty. But for the first time since the invasion began, they faced it with clear eyes and resolute hearts. Humanity's greatest victories had always emerged from its darkest hours. On Mars, surrounded by the remnants of an alien force that had once seemed unstoppable, Sergeant Jack Harper and his team embodied that enduring truth. They were flawed, vulnerable, and unmistakably human, and that made them more dangerous than any weapon in their arsenal. The countdown to the next engagement had already begun. This time, when the Zorathians returned, they would find not just defenders, but conquerors. Not just soldiers, but pioneers of a new kind of warfare. And not just humans, but representatives of a species that refused to yield, no matter the odds. In the end, that refusal to surrender, that unyielding spirit in the face of annihilation, might prove to be humanity's most powerful weapon of all. The victory at Sector 9 Alpha had bought humanity precious time, but it came at a devastating cost. As Sergeant Jack Harper surveyed the remains of their battered forces, he couldn't escape the feeling that they were merely delaying the inevitable. The facility's ancient systems groaned under the strain of continuous operation, their repurposed components pushed far beyond design tolerances. Through the reinforced windows, he watched as Zorathian reinforcements descended from orbit, their numbers dwarfing anything they'd faced before. "They're evolving again," Twitch reported from his workstation, his voice cracking with exhaustion. "Their neural networks are restructuring, more decentralized this time. They've learned from our attack on their command node." Harper studied the tactical display, watching as hundreds of red icons converged on their position. The aliens had abandoned their previous formations, opting instead for swarming tactics that made their resonance fields less effective. Worse still, their biological adaptations seemed to be accelerating, with each new wave showing increased resistance to quantum disruption. "We can't hold them off much longer," Rook admitted, joining Harper at the control center. "Our power reserves are down to 20%. The cooling systems are failing. And..." He hesitated, glancing at the medical bay where Doc worked tirelessly among the wounded. "We're losing people faster than we can treat them." The words hung heavy in the air. Of the original 12 survivors who had taken refuge in the mining facility, only 4 remained combat-ready. Private First Class Emily Doc Watson herself showed signs of accelerated aging, her once youthful features now lined with premature wrinkles. Yet she continued to tend to the injured, her hands moving with practiced efficiency despite the tremors running through her arms. Through the comm system came reports of mounting casualties. Specialist Maria Ghost Alvarez had been pinned down in Maintenance Corridor 3, her position overrun by Zorathian shock troops. Corporal Hayes had sacrificed himself to cover their retreat from the eastern flank, buying precious minutes with his life. Even Twitch, whose fingers normally danced across keyboards with nervous energy, moved with the deliberate slowness of someone fighting against cellular degradation. "Sarge," Doc called urgently from the medical bay, "we have a problem. Their weapons, they're adapting to our countermeasures. The quantum resonance isn't affecting them like before." Harper rushed to join her, finding her bent over Private Jenkins' body. The young soldier had succumbed to his injuries despite all their efforts, but something about his condition caught Harper's attention. The alien shrapnel embedded in his leg had transformed, its molecular structure now bearing an uncanny resemblance to human DNA sequences. "They're assimilating our biology," Doc explained, her voice trembling with both fear and revelation. "Using our genetic material to adapt their own synthetic forms. That's why they're becoming resistant to the resonance fields." The implications hit Harper like a physical blow. Every encounter with humanity wasn't just a battle, it was a learning experience for the Zorathians. Each death, each wound inflicted, provided them with data to improve their artificial biology. Humanity's greatest strength, their ability to adapt and overcome, had become their most dangerous vulnerability. "We need to change tactics," Harper decided, his mind racing through possibilities. "If they're using our biology against us, we need to turn that back on them." "How?" Rook demanded. "Every time we try something new, they adapt faster than we can respond." "Not every adaptation is beneficial," Doc interjected, her medical training kicking in. "Their rapid evolution creates instabilities. If we could target those weaknesses." "Like introducing a virus into a computer system," Twitch finished, already typing furiously at his console. "But instead of digital code, we'd be working with biological information." The team sprang into action, combining their remaining resources in a desperate bid to develop a new strategy. Doc worked with Twitch to analyze the genetic sequences captured from Private Jenkins' body, searching for patterns in the Zorathians' biological modifications. Rook coordinated with Ghost to establish defensive positions that would channel the enemy's movements while minimizing exposure to their adapting weaponry. Yet even as they prepared their counterattack, the situation grew increasingly dire. The facility's structural integrity alarms began blaring as ancient support beams buckled under the strain of repeated attacks. Power fluctuations caused sections of the complex to plunge into darkness, forcing them to operate by emergency lighting alone. Worst of all, the psychological toll of constant combat began manifesting in unexpected ways. Twitch's hands shook violently as he worked, his usual nervous tics amplified by stress and cellular degradation. "I can't focus," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "The numbers, they won't stop moving." Doc approached him gently, recognizing the signs of combat fatigue combined with the accelerated aging effects. "Take a break," she ordered firmly. "You're no good to anyone if you collapse." "I can't," Twitch protested weakly. "If I stop now, you'll make mistakes that could get us all killed," Harper interrupted, placing a steadying hand on the specialist's shoulder. 5 minutes. That's an order." As Twitch retreated to a nearby alcove, Harper turned to document, "How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe less," she estimated grimly. "The resonance fields are causing cumulative damage to everyone's cells. At this rate, we'll start seeing organ failure within 12 hours." The news hit the team like a hammer blow. They had been so focused on fighting the immediate threat that they hadn't fully grasped the long-term consequences of their own weapon. The very technology that had given them an edge was slowly killing them. "Then we make those hours count," Harper declared, pushing aside the despair that threatened to overwhelm him. "Twitch, when you're ready, I need you to interface with the mainframe. There's something we haven't tried yet." The specialist returned minutes later, his eyes bloodshot but focused. "What's the plan, Sarge?" "The original mining equipment," Harper explained. "It wasn't just designed for resource extraction. Those quantum resonance fields were supposed to manipulate molecular bonds. What if we use them to rewrite the Zorathians' genetic code instead of just disrupting it?" Doc's eyes widened with understanding. "We could introduce fatal instabilities into their synthetic biology, force them to evolve in directions that make survival impossible. But targeting specific sequences requires precision we don't have," Rook pointed out. "One wrong calculation and we could destabilize our own DNA." "We don't have a choice," Harper responded firmly. "Right now, we're fighting blind. This gives us a weapon we can aim." As the team worked to implement their desperate plan, the Zorathians launched their most coordinated assault yet. Without a central command node to target, the humans found themselves facing multiple simultaneous attacks from all directions. The facility's ancient machinery screamed in protest as power surged through systems never meant to handle such loads. In Maintenance Corridor 3, Ghost made her last stand. Surrounded by Zorathian shock troops, she activated the experimental resonance emitter built into her sniper rifle. The resulting pulse created a cascade effect, causing the alien synthetic forms to unravel at a molecular level. But the backlash overwhelmed her own cellular structure, and when Harper's team finally reached her position, they found only her rifle lying among the dissolving remains of their enemies. "She knew what she was doing," Rook said quietly, recovering the weapon. "Bought us exactly what we needed." Back at the control center, Twitch worked feverishly to complete the sequence calculations. His hands moved with mechanical precision despite his deteriorating condition, each keystroke bringing them closer to either salvation or destruction. Through the windows, they watched as the Zorathian forces massed for what appeared to be their final assault. "This is it," Harper announced, activating the facility-wide comm system. "Everyone to primary defense positions. When I give the signal, initiate full power to the main emitters. We're going to hit them with everything we've got." The waiting was the hardest part. As the seconds ticked away, Harper found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From the initial invasion to their discovery of the Zorathians' vulnerability, each step had been marked by sacrifice and revelation. Now, standing on the brink of either triumph or annihilation, he understood the true nature of their struggle. The Zorathians weren't just fighting to conquer, they were fighting to survive. Their synthetic biology, their hive-mind consciousness, their relentless pursuit of human contact, it all pointed to a truth far more fundamental than military conquest. They needed something humanity possessed, something so essential to their existence that its absence meant certain death. "Sequence complete," Twitch reported, his voice barely audible over the sound of approaching enemy forces. "Activating on your mark." Harper raised his modified rifle, feeling the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders. Around him, his remaining team members took their positions, each one knowing that this might be their final stand. Through the reinforced windows, Mars' twin moons cast long shadows across the battlefield, their pale light illuminating the advancing alien forces. "Now!" Harper shouted, triggering the facility's main power surge. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Quantum resonance fields erupted throughout the complex, their frequencies precisely calibrated to target the Zorathian synthetic biology. Where before the aliens had adapted to their attacks, now they found themselves unable to maintain coherence. Their bodies began to break down at a fundamental level, synthetic tissues unraveling into chaos. But the victory came at a terrible price. The power surge overloaded the facility's ancient systems, sending shockwaves through the complex. Sections of ceiling collapsed, burying entire corridors under tons of rubble. Cooling systems failed catastrophically, filling the air with superheated steam. And worst of all, the resonance fields affected human DNA as well, accelerating the cellular degradation they had been fighting since the first engagement. Sarge. Rook called from his position near the main entrance. Structural integrity at critical levels. We need to evacuate. Harper hesitated, watching as the Zorathian forces dissolved into nothingness. Their once invincible army was falling apart before his eyes, but at what cost? Behind him, Doc worked frantically to stabilize Private Mitchell, whose accelerated aging had progressed to terminal stages despite all their efforts. Twitch, Harper called, can you maintain the field remotely? The specialist shook his head, his movements growing slower as the aging effects took hold. Systems too unstable. If we leave, the emitters will shut down automatically. Then we stay, Harper decided, making the hardest choice of his career. Rook, get the wounded to the emergency bunker. Doc, go with them. Twitch and I will maintain the field until... No, Doc interrupted, surprising them all with her vehemence. We finish this together. Whatever happens, we face it as a team. The decision was unanimous, though unspoken. As the facility crumbled around them, they gathered in the central chamber, surrounded by the humming machinery that had become both their weapon and their tomb. Through the settling dust and falling debris, they watched as the last of the Zorathian forces disintegrated, their synthetic perfection undone by humanity's embrace of imperfection. Yet even as victory seemed within reach, an unexpected development changed everything. The main console sparked to life, displaying a message in perfect English. Your species contains the sequence we require. Without it, our existence terminates. Surrender or perish. The words hung in the air, carrying implications far beyond military conflict. The Zorathians weren't invaders, they were refugees, fleeing extinction by seeking the very essence of human life that made them vulnerable. The same quantum resonance fields that had saved humanity were also condemning another species to death. What do we do, Sarge? Twitch asked, his voice trembling with more than just physical weakness. Harper looked at his team, seeing in their faces the same moral dilemma reflected in his own thoughts. To continue would mean genocide, the deliberate extinction of an entire species. To stop would risk allowing the Zorathians to adapt further, potentially finding a way to harvest humanity's genetic material without consent. We find another way, Harper declared finally. Twitch, start analyzing their communication protocols. Doc, see if you can isolate the specific genetic sequence they need. Rook, prepare defensive positions in case they attempt to bypass the fields. As they worked against the clock, both literally and figuratively, Harper realized they had reached the true test of humanity's character. It wasn't enough to simply survive or to win, they had to choose how they would define victory. In that moment, surrounded by dying friends and crumbling walls, he understood that sometimes the greatest strength lay not in destruction, but in compassion. The facility's alarms reached a crescendo as structural supports began to fail completely. Outside, Mars' pale sunlight illuminated a battlefield littered with the remnants of an alien force that had come seeking salvation rather than domination. Inside, four humans worked desperately to find a solution that honored both their survival and their humanity. We're running out of time, Doc warned, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. But I think I've isolated the sequence they need. It's incredible. What is it? Harper asked, moving to join her at the console. It's not just a genetic pattern, she explained, her eyes wide with wonder. It's empathy. The ability to understand and share the feelings of others. Their synthetic biology lacks this fundamental trait, and without it, their hive-mind consciousness collapses. The revelation struck Harper with the force of revelation. The Zorathians hadn't been laughing at humanity's attempts to resist, they had been marveling at something they couldn't comprehend. Their terror upon encountering humans stemmed not from physical weakness, but from an inability to process genuine compassion and self-sacrifice. Twitch, Harper ordered, modify the resonance fields. Instead of targeting their synthetic biology, we'll use them to transmit the empathic sequences directly into their neural network. It's risky, the specialist warned. Might not work at all. Could make them stronger. Or it might show them another way to survive, Harper finished. Either way, it's better than extinction. As the final pieces fell into place, the facility's lights flickered and died, leaving them working by emergency illumination alone. The air grew thick with smoke and dust, making each breath a conscious effort. Yet despite the mounting dangers, the team pressed forward with renewed determination. When the modified resonance fields activated, the effect was immediate and profound. The remaining Zorathian forces froze in place, their forms shimmering with internal light. Through the tactical display, Harper watched as their neural networks began to restructure, not through forced adaptation but through genuine understanding. "They're learning," Doc whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Actually learning, not just processing data." The transformation spread outward, affecting even the most damaged units. Where before there had been only programmed responses, now emerged something remarkable: individuality. The Zorathians began to separate, their once unified consciousness fracturing into distinct entities, each one experiencing authentic emotion for the first time. "We did it," Rook breathed, lowering his weapon as the last of the alien forces withdrew. "We actually did it." But Harper knew their victory was bittersweet. The facility continued to collapse around them, its ancient systems giving out after their final, desperate gambit. The resonance fields that had saved humanity and redeemed their enemies now threatened to claim their lives. "Emergency bunker," Harper ordered, helping Doc to her feet. "Move." As they fled through the disintegrating complex, pursued by falling debris and cascading power failures, Harper allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. Against all odds, they had found a way to defeat an enemy without destroying them. More importantly, they had discovered something fundamental about both species, that sometimes, the greatest battles are fought not with weapons, but with understanding. The emergency bunker sealed behind them just as the main facility collapsed, burying their improvised laboratory beneath tons of Martian rock. Inside their cramped sanctuary, the surviving members of Alpha Company gathered around the single functioning monitor, watching as the transformed Zorathians withdrew from Mars' surface. "They're leaving," Twitch observed, his voice filled with exhausted wonder. "Not retreating, actually leaving. And taking something far more valuable than conquest," Doc added softly. "Hope." As Mars' twin moons rose over the devastated landscape, casting long shadows across the battlefield where moments before chaos had reigned, Harper knew they stood at a crossroads. The path forward would be fraught with challenges, questions, and uncertainty. Yet for the first time since the invasion began, they faced it not as victims or victors, but as equals. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its capacity for compassion and understanding. On Mars, surrounded by the remnants of an alien force that had once seemed unstoppable, Sergeant Jack Harper and his team had proven that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't destruction, but redemption. The countdown to the next chapter had already begun. This time, when humanity encountered other species among the stars, they would do so not as conquerors or defenders, but as teachers. Not just of warfare or technology, but of the fundamental truths that made them truly human: the ability to endure, to overcome, to rise above every obstacle through sheer force of will and compassion. In the end, that refusal to surrender, that unyielding spirit in the face of annihilation, had proven to be humanity's most powerful weapon of all. But more importantly, their willingness to extend that same compassion to their enemies had revealed something far more profound: that sometimes, the greatest victories emerge not from defeating others, but from helping them find their own path to redemption. As the emergency bunker's life support systems hummed steadily, keeping 4 weary soldiers alive amidst the ruins of their desperate battle, Harper knew they had achieved something far greater than mere survival. They had forged a new future, one where humanity's place among the stars would be defined not by their weapons or their technology, but by their capacity for understanding and growth. And somewhere, amid the stars, a transformed species carried with them the seeds of a new beginning, proof that even in the darkest hour, hope could emerge from despair, and redemption could arise from destruction. The emergency bunker's reinforced walls trembled with the aftershocks of the facility's collapse, but inside, an unexpected calm settled over Sergeant Jack Harper and his team. Through the single functioning monitor, they watched as the transformed Zorathian forces withdrew from Mars' surface, their once unified formations now scattered into individual units moving with newfound purpose. "They're not just leaving," Doc observed, her voice carrying a mixture of wonder and uncertainty. "They're changing course entirely." Harper studied the tactical display, noting how the alien ships now orbited in erratic patterns rather than their previous military precision. Each vessel seemed to pulse with internal light, suggesting profound transformations continuing within their synthetic crews. "Twitch," Harper called, "can you analyze their new movement patterns?" The specialist's fingers moved across the improvised control panel, his movement slower but still precise despite his deteriorated condition. "It's incredible, Sarge. Their neural networks are restructuring at an unprecedented rate. They're not just adapting, they're evolving genuine individual consciousness." The revelation hung heavy in the cramped space, illuminated only by the glow of status lights and the single monitor displaying the alien exodus. Around them, the sounds of settling debris and distant explosions faded, replaced by the rhythmic hum of the bunker's life support systems. "We did more than stop an invasion," Rook realized, his voice barely above a whisper. "We fundamentally changed their entire species." Doc nodded, her medical scanner trained on Private Mitchell's failing vital signs. Their hive-mind consciousness was preventing true evolution. By introducing empathy, we gave them the capacity for independent thought and feeling. "But at what cost?" Harper asked, voicing the question that had haunted him since their desperate decision. "How many lives were lost? How much destruction caused? And what happens when other species learn what we've done here?" The questions weighed heavily on them all, each one carrying implications far beyond their immediate survival. Through the monitor, they watched as the last Zorathian cruiser ascended through Mars' thin atmosphere, its sleek obsidian hull now etched with intricate patterns of light, visual representations of their newfound individuality. "Sarge," Twitch interrupted, his voice suddenly urgent. "You need to see this." He pulled up a new data stream, revealing encrypted communications between the departing Zorathian vessels. "They're broadcasting," Doc realized, studying the transmission patterns. "Not to us, to someone else." The message decoded slowly, its complexity suggesting multiple layers of meaning. When the first fragments became clear, Harper felt a chill run down his spine. "To all sentient species, we have encountered humanity. They contain the sequence required for true consciousness. Their compassion can unmake us, or remake us whole. Warn your people. Prepare for contact. This changes everything." The words resonated through the bunker like a physical force, carrying implications that made their previous battles seem insignificant by comparison. Humanity wasn't just facing a single alien species, they had become a catalyst for change across the stars. "What have we done?" Rook whispered, echoing the thought running through everyone's minds. "We've started something," Harper responded, his voice steady despite the enormity of their situation. "Something that can't be undone. The question is, are we ready for the consequences?" As if in response to his words, the bunker's ancient communication system crackled to life. A new signal emerged from the static, this one clearly directed at them. When the message finally resolved, it came not from the departing Zorathians, but from Earth Command. "Harper, this is General Thompson. We've been monitoring your transmissions. What the hell is going on up there?" Harper exchanged glances with his team, recognizing the moment that would define humanity's future among the stars. "Sir," he began, choosing his words carefully, "we've encountered an alien species that views our presence as both a threat and a necessity for their survival. Through our actions, we've inadvertently triggered a fundamental shift in their biology and consciousness. There was a long pause before the general responded. Are they still hostile? No, sir, Harper admitted. But they've transmitted a message to other species, warning them about humanity's effect on their consciousness. I believe we're about to become very interesting to the rest of the galaxy. The implications rippled through the bunker like shockwaves. No longer were they simply soldiers fighting to defend a Martian outpost, they had become representatives of humanity's first true interstellar contact. Every decision they made from this point forward would shape how other species viewed their species. Understood, General Thompson replied after another long pause. Earth Command is dispatching reinforcements immediately. In the meantime, secure the site and prepare for debriefing. And Harper. Sir. You've changed everything. Make sure it's for the better. As the communication ended, Harper turned to face his team. Each member showed signs of accelerated aging, their bodies paying the price for humanity's victory. Yet in their eyes burned a determination that transcended mere survival. We need to document everything, Doc suggested, already setting up recording equipment. Every encounter, every discovery, every sacrifice. Other species will want to understand what happened here. Twitch nodded, his hands moving across the console despite their increasing tremors. I'll compile all the data, combat logs, genetic sequences, tactical innovations. We need to leave a complete record. But we also need to prepare, Rook added, checking their remaining weapons. If other species respond to the Zorathians' message, we might not have much time before more visitors arrive. The weight of their responsibility settled over them like Mars gravity, heavier than any of them had anticipated. Through the monitor, they watched as the last traces of the Zorathian fleet disappeared from orbit, leaving behind a planet forever changed by their presence. Sarge, Doc called softly, interrupting his thoughts. Look at this. She held up her medical scanner, showing the cellular degradation rates of their team. The accelerated aging effects are stabilizing. Whatever changes occurred during the final resonance field modification seems to have affected our biology too. Harper examined the readings, seeing confirmation of what they'd all suspected. Their exposure to the quantum resonance fields hadn't just harmed them, it had altered them at a fundamental level. Like the Zorathians, they had undergone a transformation, though theirs was biological rather than synthetic. We've become something new, Doc continued, her voice filled with both awe and trepidation. Our DNA shows enhanced adaptability, increased resistance to cellular damage. The same qualities that terrified the Zorathians now exist within us. The realization struck them all simultaneously. Humanity's greatest strength, their ability to adapt and overcome, had been amplified by the very technology meant to protect them. They weren't just survivors anymore, they were pioneers of a new kind of existence. As Earth's reinforcements approached Mars' orbit, visible as tiny specks against the pale sunlight, Harper gathered his team for one final discussion before their isolation ended. This isn't over, he acknowledged, looking each member in the eye. In fact, it's just beginning. The Zorathians came seeking salvation, but they left carrying something far more dangerous, understanding. When other species learn what happened here, they'll come seeking answers. And we'll be ready, Rook declared, his voice stronger than ever despite his visible age lines. Not just with weapons or technology, but with the truth about who we are and what we're capable of. Doc nodded, her medical scanner still active. We'll need to develop new protocols for first contact situations. The resonance fields proved effective, but they also demonstrated our most dangerous quality, our ability to change others through simple proximity. The same quality that makes us dangerous makes us valuable, Harper concluded. Other species won't just fear us, they'll respect us. Fear is temporary, but respect endures. Through the bunker's reinforced viewport, they watched as the first Earth ships descended through Mars' atmosphere, their familiar forms bringing both relief and apprehension. The debriefings would be exhaustive, the questions endless. Yet through it all, they knew they carried something far more important than military intelligence: hope for a future where different species could coexist through mutual understanding rather than conflict. As the airlock cycled open and fresh faces appeared, wearing the insignia of Earth's newly formed Interstellar Contact Division, Harper stepped forward to meet them. Behind him, his team stood ready, their battered armor and aged faces telling a story far more complex than any report could capture. "Welcome to Mars," Harper said simply. "Prepare yourselves, humanity's place among the stars has changed forever." The newcomers paused, taking in the scene before them. The ruined facility, the exhausted survivors, the monitors still displaying fragments of alien consciousness. Then, as if sensing the gravity of the moment, they snapped to attention, saluting not just their fellow soldiers, but representatives of humanity's first true interstellar encounter. In that moment, standing amid the ruins of their desperate battle, Harper understood that they had achieved something far greater than victory. They had forged a new path forward, one where humanity's role among the stars would be defined not by their weapons or their technology, but by their capacity for growth, understanding, and compassion. As the reinforcements began securing the site and establishing communication links with Earth, Harper allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, questions, and uncertainty. New species would emerge from the stars, drawn by the Zorathians' message and humanity's response. Some would come seeking knowledge, others vengeance, and still others salvation. Yet through it all, they would face these encounters not as conquerors or victims, but as equals, flawed, vulnerable, and unmistakably human. Their greatest weapon wouldn't be their technology or their tactics, but their willingness to extend understanding even to those who sought their destruction. "Sir," one of the newcomers approached, holding a secure data tablet. "Earth Command wants your preliminary report. But first..." He hesitated, clearly struggling with how to phrase his next words. "They want to know if we're at war." Harper considered the question, weighing the implications of each possible answer. Finally, he responded with words that would echo through humanity's history. "Not war," he declared firmly. "Transformation. The Zorathians didn't invade us, they evolved through us. Now it's our turn to evolve through them. We're not just defending our species anymore, we're defining what it means to be truly sentient in a universe full of possibilities." The statement hung in the air, carrying implications far beyond their immediate situation. As the newcomers processed his words, Harper turned back to his original team, the survivors who had faced impossible odds and emerged not just victorious, but transformed. "We started something here," he told them quietly. "Something that will change everything we thought we knew about ourselves and our place in the universe. Are you ready for what comes next?" Their responses came without hesitation, each one carrying the weight of their shared experience. "Always," Doc replied, her medical scanner still active. "Bring it on," Rook declared, checking his modified rifle. "Worth every second," Twitch added, his fingers still dancing across the console despite his condition. As Mars' twin moons rose over the devastated landscape, casting long shadows across the battlefield where moments before chaos had reigned, Harper knew they stood at the threshold of a new era. The path forward would be challenging, filled with both triumphs and tragedies yet to unfold. But for the first time, humanity faced the stars not with fear or aggression, but with genuine curiosity and compassion. The resonance fields that had saved them had also changed them, amplifying their most dangerous quality, their ability to adapt and overcome through sheer force of will and understanding. Like the Zorathians before them, they had discovered that sometimes the greatest transformations emerge not from destruction, but from redemption. As the reinforcements worked to establish a permanent presence on Mars, and as Earth Command prepared for the inevitable wave of interstellar contacts to come, Harper and his team remained at the heart of humanity's new frontier. Their experiences had forged them into something more than soldiers, they had become ambassadors, teachers, and pioneers of a future where different species could coexist through mutual growth rather than conflict. In the end, their greatest achievement hadn't been defeating an enemy or saving their species. It had been proving that sometimes, the most powerful weapon isn't destruction, but understanding. That in the vast darkness of space, humanity's brightest light would shine not from their weapons or their technology, but from their capacity for compassion and growth. And somewhere, amid the stars, countless species received the Zorathians' message, preparing themselves for contact with a species that could unmake them, or remake them whole. The choice, as always, would depend not on their weapons or their technology, but on their willingness to embrace change through understanding. Humanity's journey among the stars had begun, and with it came responsibilities far greater than mere survival. As Sergeant Jack Harper looked out across the Martian plains, watching Earth's reinforcements secure their position while scanning the skies for new arrivals, he knew they had crossed a threshold that could never be uncrossed. The real adventure was just beginning.